using the law in this case is that no specific person has been arrested or convicted of carrying out some of the specific shootings alleged. So there was holes in this thing from the beginning. As I say, I spent 3 hours on this yesterday. It was a ridiculous law. Now, you have to applaud the DA and the police department for trying to eradicate gang violence, but I can tell you at the same time, this is not the way to do it, because you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And by the same logic, you could arrest me for talking about a gang story because I'm trying to get my ratings up. So aren't I benefiting from the gang story? Hence, aren't I promoting the gang story? Honestly, that's how ridiculous this law is. The Black Student Justice Coalition is made up from students from various college campuses in San Diego who take up issues of social justice. Mark Jones is the president. He joins me here on News Radio 600 KOGO. Hey, Mark, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. First of all, obviously a positive outcome yesterday, at least in my opinion. I'm sure in your opinion too. Was there any real question in your mind that this would actually not be the ruling? I was kind of foregone thinking it would have been a stretch to carry this case and bring it over to trial, don't you think?
Well, the stretch is definitely common sense to us, but it wasn't so much common sense in earlier preliminaries. So there was a serious concern that the 995 motion put on by the lawyers was actually not going to be granted. We know that one of the previous judges actually bound these members over for trial in order for this to even happen. So it was still a very serious issue to us.
What is the it was said that the law was put in place, and I don't know if it was a member of your group, but I've heard groups say that it was put in place for the sole limited purpose of detaining and arresting men of color. Do you really believe that?
I believe it was put in place for mass incarceration, and I do believe that it is used disproportionately against communities of color. It is a means of, it right now is being used as a means to go into first Black neighborhoods and just pretty much do a roundup of anybody that, you know, is an alleged gang member. And that's how you see it being used right now in the community of Lincoln Park in the southeastern district of San Diego.
From where I'm sitting, it's just a bad law.
It is a horrible law.
I like what you had to say about after some work is done, and I'll get to that in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get this unconstitutional law taken completely off the books. What do you intend on doing? Are you going to lead that effort?
Yes, we, and when I say we, I mean a bunch of the community, the clergy is involved in this process. We've been to Oakland, and there's movement in Oakland on this, and in Los Angeles. We just attended a national conference of Black Studies where professors from all over the nation heard about this and pledged to do things about it. We're currently looking for that big national push, that national support. But there is an effort we see statewide to not just get this, the Penal Code 182.5 stricken from the legislator, but also the whole Proposition 21, which is kind of like the grandfather of it all.
I have to ask you, because you say on your Facebook page, and by the way, joining me now, Mark Jones, president of the Black Student Justice Coalition. You say on your Facebook page, the fight is far from over. Mm-hmm. Not only are there 18 people still being charged with the 182.5, talk about that, the 18 people still being charged.
Well, okay, so this is where things got a little confusing in the beginning. There were 33 young Black men charged with this. And there were a wide range of individuals on this case. Now, there were men who were completely innocent and never had a criminal record whatsoever. Then there were men who had records but did not commit the crimes they were being charged of. And then there were men who were in federal prison.
Can I ask you before you answer, because the first section I understand, the second section you said there were known gang members that were not guilty. How do we know they weren't guilty if they didn't stand trial?
Well, we always say we use the word alleged because the whole process of documentation for gang members is another battle in itself, and how they get documented is one of the problems that we have. So these alleged gang members, some were in jail at the time when they were charged with the 182.5. How can someone who is in prison commit a crime that was committed outside?
Well, obviously, and that was
Right.
the problem with this law. You can't. But the law provided that if you benefited, then
If you
it was the same as you committing the shooting or whatever.
exactly.
And spent 3 hours yesterday saying that was the problem with the crime in the first place. So I agree with you there. What I'm concerned about is you have to applaud the police department and the DA for the credible work they do in trying to rid the city from gang violence. There's 173 gang sets here in San Diego. Now, obviously, there's problems with the law. So how do you balance that? How do you balance the fact that many gang members are people of color? Not all, but many, and of course, arrest records correlate with that. So how do you balance that fact and what the police is trying to do with what you're trying to do?
Well, if you look at, you have to discuss numbers and put them in their perspective. If you look at, you have to get to the San Diego Police Department racial profiling numbers to understand what's going on. The argument can be made that we have a racial profiling issue here in San Diego, and it goes through the whole process of gang documentation of how police officers stop and even harass a bunch of people in certain communities where gangs are considered to be, whether these people are gang members or not. They may live near gang territory. They may be walking home. They may have on certain colors. So in a lot of cases, a lot of these people, and even a lot of the members caught up in this 182.5, were never gang members. They just lived in the neighborhood where the gangs existed.
But
so
are you willing to accept or at least acknowledge that some of the people here arrested are in gangs?
Some of the people arrested, yes, are in gangs, but there is no crime in being in a gang. The crime comes when you commit criminal activity.
Agreed. No, agreed. And by the way, to be in the Cal Gang database is not a crime, and I think many people think that is a crime, and it's not a crime. And unfortunately, me being a white, pink Irish guy on St. Patrick's Day is never going to end up in that database for just walking down the street.
Exactly.
And I think that's what the point is here, right?
And that's the point. I'm not saying that we don't have a criminal element out there, and that we don't want bad criminals. Off the streets. What I am saying is that disproportionately across the board in communities of color, you see these practices being used which criminalize our neighborhoods. And if you look at the actual data, you will see that gang crime is at an all-time low. And this was before the 182.5 sweep. So their whole reasoning for it was off in the first place. And if you look at the data once again in the Southeastern District, where primarily the African American community lives, we have the third lowest crime rate in all of San Diego County. PB has more crime than we do. So their reasoning behind it is not even valid or supported by factual evidence.
So what do you say, by the way, and Mark Jones is our guest, president of the Black Student Justice Coalition here on News Radio 600 KOGO. What do you say to the supporters of a law like that, which I clearly was not a supporter of, that say that laws like that are going to assist in eradicating gangs? Because that's the pushback you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. And it is the pushback that we have gotten. What we have to do is share our experiences. We have to share our story. They have to see things as if they were looking through it from our eyes, because the word gang is used to dehumanize black men in a lot of cases. It's used to dehumanize the person. Way before a jury even comes into it. You see Bonnie Dumanis has been going around on the news and things like that, throwing this word gang out, saying that these men are criminals and putting them all in the same category. And this is polluting the jury pool. So if this thing did get to trial, they already have the narrative that she's painted. So we've been doing our best to bring the two men that were out on bail, that's Harvey and Duncan, in front of people and just let them share their stories. Duncan lost his grandfather while he's in jail. This man is a father of children and takes care of his children and was providing for them before he went to jail. And, things happened when he was in jail. Harvey was in Las Vegas and had no knowledge or any information about the crimes whatsoever when he was arrested. He was brought back down here, has spent thousands of dollars, lost his real estate, had a real estate license he was going after, lost that. This guy, worked at Caltrans, worked as an EMT. These are just everyday people contributing to their society. But when you throw that word gang at them, it dehumanizes them. And in the public eye, to somebody that may not have the black experience, it's easy to see that word gang and be automatically judge them. That person deserves to be in jail.
So then how, and this is an honest question, I'm not being glib here. So how?
Oh, it's okay.
I mean, because I think you're right. You were spot on. You just described the scenario for living in San Diego that don't have your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so let's talk about some neighborhoods all across this county that don't have that experience. How do you effectively solve that problem to where the gangbangers should rightly be known as gangbangers, and the others should not?
It's not an easy or a point by point solution. I think in a lot of cases where gangs are concerned, it's not so much just a crime issue; it's an economy issue. There's a lot of opportunities that they don't have, but then you'll have the argument that some people say that some people have, some gang members have both their parents and are well off and they're still gang members, and that's a family issue. But I honestly think that it just takes a little bit of understanding and a visit to those neighborhoods, especially when it comes to the San Diego Police Department, who operate in those neighborhoods but go home to their own after their day of work. They're in those neighborhoods. They're criminalizing these young men. They may be arresting some of these young men. So you see this culture that's permeated through the San Diego Police Department that these young men are bad no matter who I see, because of they may have had an issue the day before or an issue a month later, and so they just start to see everybody in the same light. These are bad people.
Point well taken. I understand that. Listen, I cannot let you out of here, Mark, without talking about what came down today from the Department of Justice and the independent review of the internal processes and policies of the SDPD release today. By the way, just a reminder, I'm talking to Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman today at 3 o'clock here in the program.
Okay.
News Radio 600 KOGO. If you're tuning in, I want you to listen. So the review overseen by the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, known as COPS. 83-page audit, 40 recommendations. Not so bad from what I've read so far. A lot of the items are already being handled. The big thing that stands out, according to most of the reports, is the failure of leadership on the small issues, which I don't think is a big surprise. Bill Lansdowne ordered this and then quit. Keep in mind that Shelley Zimmerman is not yet a year in, and I've got to applaud her for her job. What's your take on this one?
I always want to say this first because I want people to take my position carefully. I applaud what Shelley Zimmerman, and I've talked with her, we sat down, what she's done as far as community relations, trying to build the relationship between the community and its police force. But at the same time, I've also said that we know and we see by the own admission of their own data that there's still a racial profiling issue. And this report was not really structured to find that out. It's more based on their policies. It's more to correct what they see as far as a policy issue. And I think that it does that, gives great recommendations, but it points to one problem that I've seen and we've spoken of and we've been fighting for, is there is a culture issue here in the San Diego Police Department that permeates this type of behavior, such as racial profiling, the gang documentation process, things of that nature. And if they don't deal with the culture issue along with the policy change, then you're going to continue to have this underlying, I can get away with this. And that's what you saw with the sexual assault. But I'd like to stretch that and say that just because it was sexual assault that was found doesn't mean that is not applying across the board to other issues that the San Diego Police Department are dealing with.
So what do you think, Mark, needs to be done? I mean, if you could wave a magic wand today and work in concert with Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman, what would you do? What would be the number one thing you would do to try to eradicate the racial profiling?
I think there needs to be more community control when it comes to every process that the police department deals with. So recruiting, there needs to be a community board that helps the police department to get that diverse pool of people in. When it comes to training, there needs to be a community board, a diverse community board. So things that what happened with Sergeant Scott and that ridiculous cartoon would have never happened if there were a diverse board overseeing these practices. When it comes to our civilian and community review board, there needs to be a diverse board, and it needs to have the subpoena power, and it needs to have an independent review that protects the community from crimes committed or incidents by the San Diego Police Department.
Do you think things are getting any better this last year under Chief Zimmerman?
I think they have. And to be fair to her, I think they have. The community relation is building, but you have to understand there still is a national movement that's putting a light on these things. So things may just look worse right now, but I think with the implementation of these things and not ignoring what your data is saying about how you are treating communities of color, that things can get better.
I want you in studio with me sometime, man. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the good work. The Black Student Justice Coalition President Mark Jones joins me today on News Radio 600 KOGO. Mark, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.